Hi guys, this is your girl Wakeji Kamore and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. I hope that you guys are doing well. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time that you're listening to this. Today we are going to be looking at Psalms chapter 11 or Psalm 11. This is the title of the psalm. It says, "The Lord is in his holy temple." And it is a psalm that was done by David, and it was done, or rather, was supposed to be given to the choir master. I'm going to be reading this from the English Standard Version, and then I'm going to share my lessons. I'm going to share what it is that I have picked up from this chapter. If you haven't read this chapter for yourself, imagine it is good to just read the chapter. I know I'm reading it word for word, but also just take some time to read it, internalize it, so then by the time we are reading this, you're not just like, what's happening? You already know what the chapter is about. So please pause this recording, read the chapter for yourself, then come back to continue the recording. This is what it says in chapter 11. "In the Lord I take refuge. How can you say to my soul, flee like a bird to your mountains? For behold, the wicked bend the bow. They have fitted their arrow to the string, to shoot in the dark at the upright in heart. If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes see, his eyelids test the children of men. The Lord tests the righteous, but his soul hates the wicked and the one who loves violence. Let him rain coals on the wicked, and fire and sulfur and a scorching wind shall be the portion of their cup. For the Lord is righteous. He loves righteous deeds, and the upright shall behold his face." So basically, this there's a different version that says at the beginning, it says, "How dare you tell me to flee to the mountains?" So the first verse is where we are really going to be focusing on this day. So anyway, this is what is happening. While serving, or rather this is at the point when David wrote this psalm. It was when he was serving at King Saul's court that he wrote this psalm after slaying Goliath. Saul was driven by jealousy and suspicion, and Saul was trying to kill David on multiple occasions. And during those years, everyone gave David the same advice, which was run for the mountains. But even though the situation was dire, and it was always dire, because his life was always at risk. David's response was, "How dare you tell me to flee to the mountains for safety when I am trusting in the Lord?" David knew that he was exactly where God had placed him to be, and it would have been disobedience to God for David to run away. At that specific time, he was being told to run away. But instead, he placed his life in God's hands. He chose to trust the Lord, just as he had always done, because David chose to live right, and his righteous God was always by his side. So what can we learn from this chapter, and how can we respond to it? A few questions. What is currently making you want to quit? Have things started to deteriorate at your work, at your job, at your business? Maybe a career that you chose. Maybe you went to campus and you chose a course and you're just like, mi nataka quit. Maybe it's your family or just life in general. Things have just deteriorated. Have friends advised you to get out before things get really ugly? Have you ever gotten such advice? Get out before it gets ugly, especially in business. Me, I've gotten that advice before. And every single time when I stayed, it didn't make sense to the people who were telling me to get out. Like especially in business, I've been told to get out of this business before it gets worse. And every time I've stayed in business, it hasn't made sense. Sometimes even to me, it hasn't made sense to the people who are advising me, to my friends as well. But every single time I've stayed, even if I've held on 2 more years, 1 more year, it has always ended in victory. So it's natural to want to get away from anything that causes you discomfort or discouragement. At times, however, God may call you to withstand a situation beyond human logic. And there's only one reason for a child of God to change direction. And that reason is obedience to God. The only reason you can change direction is if the Lord has told you to change direction. And in the same way, there's only one reason for Christians to stay where they shouldn't be staying. And that is if you know that the Lord has placed you there and He has not yet released you to go. Either way, whether the Lord is asking you to stay or whether the Lord is asking you to move, it is my prayer that we can be counted as those who put our trust in the Lord. That we can be counted as those who put our trust in the Lord enough to place our life directions, our careers, our jobs, our families, our businesses in His hand. That's my prayer for us today, that we would be counted. We will be those people who, when the Lord has told us to stay, we will stay. Even when we are being advised otherwise, we'll be like, how dare you tell me to flee to the mountains when I am trusting in the Lord? Because that is exactly what David said. That when we are being told to move and everybody else thinks you should stay, you will trust in the Lord even when it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't make sense to the people around you. You will be, how dare you tell me to flee to the mountains when I am trusting in the Lord? That's my prayer, that we will, whether the Lord is, whatever instruction it is that we are getting from the Lord, whether we are being instructed to go, to remain, to hold on for a little bit, it is my prayer that we'll be counted as those who trust in God, so much so that we have placed our life's direction, our career, our jobs, our businesses, and our families in God's hands. Thank you so much for listening, and see you tomorrow.